from the College by the Lake, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discussing the issues and topics affecting the way you live are on Forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart.
I wish to welcome you to a three-part series. It's going to be entitled An Asian Album and Journey. We have two very qualified guests to be with us for the next 3 weeks. They are my colleagues and friends at North Idaho College, and our two guests have taken groups to many different places in foreign countries and really become great experts. I'm particularly impressed with our guests that when they go to other countries, that they get to really know and understand life in those countries and the people's happiness and their pain. And it certainly has come out from this series that we're about to do. Our guests are Judy Sildy and Jill McLeod, who are both faculty members at North Idaho College. And I would first introduce Judy Sildy, who is in the History and Humanities Department at North Idaho College. She holds a baccalaureate degree from Whitworth College, and her master's is from UCLA. And next to her is her spouse and colleague, Jill McLeod, in the English Department at North Idaho College. He holds a baccalaureate degree from the University of Washington, and he has also a master's degree from Eastern Washington University. Judy and Jim, welcome to the program. And as I told our guests, you took around 2 months on this last tour to Asia, and you took some time off from North Idaho College, and I know at your own expense that you did this. But you've come back, and for our viewers who might be interested, you did a 3-part Popcorn Forum lecture series at North Idaho College, 50-minute videos. They're in the library, and they go into great detail, and we thank you for what you have done. I would also tell our viewers that on show number 1 today, we're going to go through what is called a passage to India. Our guests had a stopover in Thailand and then went to Delhi and Bombay in particular. If you will join us again next week on the second show, we're going to India. Our guests call it the vibrant south of that country. And in the third week, we will visit cities, peaks, and jungles in India, and also some time in Nepal, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So I hope you'll be with us through this series. Judy and Jim, we're going to have a little bit different format at the beginning. After I introduce our panel, Janelle Berg, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and next to her is Steve Schenck, the Dean of College Relations and Development at North Idaho College. And as we get into our questioning series, you've been kind enough to bring a number of slides. We know you have over, I think it was 1,200 slides from this visit. And Judy, if I can start with you, we're getting ready to show those slides, and I know you and Jim are going to take us through those to give our viewers a little visual, and then our panel will ask questions about in-depth issues on this first week of the program. Sure. Please introduce those slides, and then our staff will be bringing those up on the screen.
Okay. Well, you realize that what we have is here just a very small sample of what we saw. We should have a map on screen, I think. It'll be coming up in a moment, okay. And then you can take us through this process. Okay, all right. Well, I guess I can warm you up by telling you what you'll be seeing on the map. Actually, our trip was just about 4 months long, and we traveled by way of Thailand, spent just a couple weeks there, warming up for the trip by making practical arrangements and actually doing just a lot of studying, and then traveled on to India, and India was really the focus of most of the trip. We went from Delhi into the western desert of Rajasthan and Bombay, headed south, spent a good deal of time in the south of India, then on to the neighboring island of Sri Lanka, which we'll also talk about next week, back up through northern India to Agra and Varanasi, and to Nepal, and then, as you just said, home by way of Thailand, Singapore, and Hong Kong. So we got to sample a lot of different Asian cultures in the process.
That was really an exhaustive trip for you, and as the map indicates, that you went through very, very much. But we want to now go through the slides and let you show us those.
Okay. Our first stop was Bangkok, and Bangkok has grown up around the Chao Phraya River. It is not only the historic heartland of Bangkok, but it is really about the only artery in the city that isn't entirely clogged. Bangkok has notorious traffic problems, so the river is not only a really scenic way to get around, but actually the most convenient way. And this time we stayed right on the river and enjoyed that very much. However, the urban congestion of Bangkok isn't the whole story, because we also spent a good deal of time in what are called the klongs, the small canals that are the back lanes and country roads of Bangkok. And there people live, bathe, swim, shop, which is what the image here shows, a floating market. And it's very good to get out of the mainstream, the urban congestion, and see how it is that.
So that's a real contrast
really
in that slide there, isn't it?
Tremendous contrast. Bangkok is full of contrast, and as a matter of fact, that's probably the theme of our entire Asian journey, just almost unimaginable contrasts in every one of the countries that we visited. Bangkok is a city that Jim and I both love and hate intensely at the same time. But this part of Bangkok, the little klongs, we really like very much. They're very colorful, and the whole pace is just so much quieter than anything that we've seen before.
I noticed in the video that you did of the 50 minutes of each program that there is the modern section and the construction, and then you go into the older part of the cities are the rural areas, and there is that contrast in that process. In dealing with that, you talk about the richness of the culture, but you also talk about economics of the poor and the rich. And as we continue on with the slides, I know that this will continue to come out. And Judy, would you take us to this particular parade? Or
okay,
Jim, would you like?
Sure.
I'll just comment on this, Tony. This is Republic Day parade in New Delhi, and it's the, I guess you'd call it sort of the 4th of July celebration for Indian independence. And as you can see, the flags are flying there and the marchers are going by. And of course, it's an extremely exciting parade. Lots of elephant corps and pike bands and military units and so on. Rajasthani camel cavalry are just really very interesting. But with all that excitement, you wouldn't think you'd need anything else, but we had an experience that we will talk about perhaps later, which there was actually a protest in the middle of the group that we were with, and this protest was dealt with by some of the special police that the Indians have, and was pretty frightening to us to have that happen. So we'll say more about that at a later point.
The last shot that you saw was New Delhi. We're looking at a shot of Old Delhi now, and again, you see the contrast that we're talking about. New Delhi is an area of broad avenues, huge public buildings, green parks. Old Delhi is crammed with people. It's an ocean of humanity, very exotic, congested. The marketplace is fascinating to look around, but it's hard to imagine a city that would have greater contrasts than Delhi. Here we see a restaurant, actually. I didn't venture to eat in a place like that, although we ate in some that were very similar in many respects.
One thing about your trip that was so significant is that you did go out and live and travel throughout the country. You didn't just stay in the modern hotels and not touch the real richness of the people and their culture.
Yes, exactly. We actually tried to stay out of the big cities as much as we could. We spent a few days in each of the big cities of India other than Calcutta, which we never made it to, because of course there are fantastic cultural riches there. But Jim and I always have a preference for smaller towns, and even more so for rural villages, and that's what you see here.
Yes, the slide there.
This is Rajasthan, the western part of India. As you can see, it's a desert area, very colorful. Many of the people are still semi-nomadic tribesmen. They gather together for great camel fairs like this. It's probably one of the most photogenic areas of India, and probably one that's familiar to many viewers because it's the part of India that Hollywood likes. It's shown up in a lot of films and so on. We were very partial to it, and we especially liked Jaisalmer, which you see here. Did you want to comment on that?
Well, just that this particular scene, as you can see, looks like something out of Raiders of the Lost Ark here, and it really is an exciting, vibrant area, lots of color. Surprising because, of course, in a desert area you would think things would be sort of bland and dusty, but here you have, as you can see, a very colorful people and groups of different nomads come into this city. It's hard, sometimes you think of India being very backward, but there are modern facilities in this city too, so there are big contrasts in this city between the modern and the ancient situations.
One of the things that you talked about was your transportation, and it was not always the same mode of transportation. We can get back to that because you have another slide.
Okay, well, while we were in Rajasthan, one of the most interesting things that we did was to spend a good deal of time getting out into the very rural villages, and I do mean small villages, sometimes with less than 100 population. Part of that time we were escorted around by a Maharaja who was quite a dapper fellow and who seemed to know everyone in all the local villages. So we feel that we got a really good inside look at how life is for just an average Indian villager. And in fact, we need to remember that 3/4 of the population of India today still lives in villages like the one that we've just seen here. India's population is almost 1 billion, so you stop and think how many of those people are living in villages, and you realize we need to make an effort to understand places like that and not just the big cities. Here you see women, actually they're decorating pottery. We had a chance to see a lot of the handicrafts practiced. One of the things you can see most clearly here in this image is very typical of Rajasthan, and that is the incredible number of ivory bangles that a Rajasthani woman wears. This is because all that she owns personally is in the form of jewelry, and I found one of the things that was a real icebreaker for us in the villages was jewelry. The women weren't speaking English. I, of course, don't speak any of the Rajasthani dialects, but several times women would come up to me and admire earrings that I was wearing and exclaim over them, and I would exclaim over theirs, and it made a nice friendly interchange. This is one of our most memorable moments, I think, in all of India. We visited a small village school in Rajasthan. You can see that the facilities are very modest. It was a wonderful experience. The boys were just as friendly and excited by our presence as could be. What I remember most vividly is them saying, "Sir, sir," and by the way, ladies are addressed as sir by many people in India too. "Sir, sir, from which country?" And we said, "USA." "USA! Ah, Michael Jackson!" So they may not speak much English, but they do know about American culture.
So modern communications has got all of these activities
That's
and names
rather
around.
amazing when you think of it, a rural desert village in Rajasthan, and they know Michael Jackson.
Yes.
Anyway, this is a very great contrast. This is Bombay. Bombay is India's largest city, 14 million inhabitants. Just as a point of reference, the population of the entire state of Idaho is 1 million, so 14 times our state. A lot of it looks very British, as you can see here. A legacy of the long years as really the capital of the British Empire. And what we're looking at is Victoria Terminus, the first major railway station in India. You can also see double-decker buses there that look very much like Glasgow or London or almost any place in the British Isles. Parts of Bombay are very prosperous. You see a lot of jet setters, a lot of what I would call Indian yuppies, but by contrast, parts of Bombay are incredibly poor. Of the population of 14 million, roughly half of them live in slums such as these. And as a matter of fact, it's, I understand, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 million in Bombay have no homes whatsoever. They literally sleep on the streets or often in the train stations and so on. So one of the things that any visitor to India must come to terms with is poverty and all of those issues of human responsibility. Am I my brother's keeper? How should I respond to the leper who asks for a few coins and so on? You're confronted with that issue many, many times a day. And it's disturbing.
As the population grows, that's going to even be more heightened if that's possible. Then
exactly. India is making real efforts to curtail its population. Right now, the population growth rate is about 2%, and that's a real improvement over what it was for a long time. But the United States rate is about 0.9%. So if you figure they have almost 1 billion people right now and growing at a 2% annual rate, you can see how critical those problems are.
Janelle Burke.
You have lived an experience that most of us only dream about having, a wonderful trip. Let's start with you, Jim, and ask you, how did you get around? How did you travel around the country?
Well, we took just about every form of transportation except camels. And we had some good experiences on the train, enjoyed that. Flights from various places. The country is so large and vast that you have to use air travel. I mean, you couldn't possibly, in the time we had, cover the country without using that. A lot of times we took the local little three-wheeler, little cabs and things of that sort, rickshaws, just about anything. But one of the best things we did is we went on a trip in the desert in a 1952 or 53 Ambassador British-made car that was being manufactured now today, the same car that they made then, the same exact car, and it was very comfortable, and we had a great time riding through the desert, the windows down, watching the people in their daily lives.
Did you actually do some driving, Jim?
Not in India, not in India. I would not want to drive in India. Frankly, I think I've been in many places in the world, and I think India would probably be the last place I'd ever want to drive in. Many of our worst drivers in this country, I think, would be better than any of the ones that were there. It's really a circus.
Their death rate from vehicular accidents is 10 times the United States, just to give you some idea.
Steve Sheen.
Tell me a little bit about how you get ready for a 4-month trip. I mean, just the logistics of it must be quite a challenge.
Well, lots of reading. Jim and I, between the two of us, read over 200 books before and during the trip. Jim teases me that one of the ways he knows the trip is coming up soon is when he hears the maps rattling at about 4 in the morning when I'm so excited I can't sleep anymore, so I've got to get those out. We tried to talk to a lot of people who were Indian, made some contacts in professional circles, some of them by email and computer bulletin boards, had many invitations to visit people's homes. You did a lot of family history research and preparation.
We watched a lot of video too. We tried to get some travel videos and take a look at what we might see. And I think we were in a dead panic, frankly, Steve, when we left because we didn't feel like we were prepared enough. And the trouble is that you can prepare intellectually all you want to, but when you are actually there, confronted with the reality of what you're seeing, the poverty and so on, probably there's no way to really prepare yourself for that, and that of course is a plus too, because that's an education in itself.
Give me an idea, and let's exclude travel days when you're about to change locations, because now you've got bus and plane schedules and hotel reservations, those sorts of things. Set that aside and tell me, as educators, when you're in a town or a village, what was your average day like, and how did you work your studies into that temptation to be tourists?
I'll let you answer that.
Well, the first order of business when you wake up in the morning, of course, is to find some place to eat and to hope you're going to find some place that's going to be the menu is going to be such that you can recognize what you're getting. We found the food to be very good. We ate in a lot of Islamic restaurants and Hindu too, but Islamic in particular, we found that food quite good. We usually had an itinerary set up for the day. We tried to get out as early as possible because, of course, we're talking about hot country for the most part, and so we would figure out how we were going to get our transportation together. Generally, it was rickshaw, motorized rickshaw, and would travel to a museum or whatever Islamic site or whatever it would be that we'd want to see, or Hindu temple. We would be besieged always by all kinds of people doing free enterprise activities, trying to sell us various things, and I tried to resist that if we could. We generally didn't always have any kind of formal guide here. I mean, we did our own guiding for the most part. We did take a few city tours in various places that were very inexpensive. I've forgotten exactly how much. It seems like they were.
Oh, in India, you can go for an entire day on a guided tour for $2, $3.
And one tour we we left at 8 in the morning, and they were still hard at it at 8 at night, and we bailed out at that point because it was a little bit long for us. But
did you make a concerted effort to contact other educators, or did you occasionally run into people who served that same function of being able to introduce you to other people and the culture?
We actually had plans to contact educators, but we had so many unexpected opportunities that we ended up doing less of what we had thought we would do. We had some fantastic opportunities. For example, when we were in southern India, some of the people at the hotel that became sort of our home base there understood that there was one historical topic that we were especially interested in, which we became interested in originally because it tied in with Jim's family history, but it became a real scholarly interest for us. And he offered to introduce us to the foremost scholar in all of India on this topic, and a man named Dr. B. Sheikh Ali, who was the rector of the university. And he very kindly invited us over to his home, and we spent the whole afternoon over tea discussing all kinds of fascinating aspects of the topic. As a matter of fact, we found very gratifying the fact that we were each able to tell the other something that was genuinely new and helpful information. So we had never met the man, we were from opposite sides of the world, and yet we really felt we were colleagues. That was exciting.
I'll just add this, too. He introduced us to his family, which is quite an honor to have a man of his stature in this culture to introduce you to his family. So we felt very, very honored to be received that way.
That's a good point. You left some flexibility in your schedule so you could take advantage of some very meaningful things in your trip.
That's all I wanted to add to Jim's earlier answer. Generally, we would plan about a half day of activities and leave the rest just to see what came along. And in fact, I think that's the key to really understanding what a culture is about. Some days it was unavoidable. It was all day long, but serendipity is a big part of travel.
I want to deal with the safety issue. One reason why we showed the slides, but as we go back to certain subjects, our viewers can put in their mind what they saw. The slide we had concerning the parade that you mentioned earlier, there was an incident there. One thing that is of concern in this country and all over the world today is terrorism, and I know that there is that episode. I wish you'd tell us about that, and then another one that you had, so our viewers who might be traveling to be aware that there's some things that you need to be cautious about.
Well, I just add to only a few things. The security for the Republic Day Parade is something that I've never been through in my life. We were searched, body searches, and weren't allowed to take cameras in. At one point, I had to take the film out of my camera, and they were going to confiscate the film. I don't know why. I didn't think that was on the list of terrorist sorts of weapons, but they were definitely concerned about this. When we did finally get in and sit down and so on, there were all kinds of security people around. And at one point, as I said, during the parade, several men and women in the back of our section got up with a banner, unfurled it. We had the feeling, and we didn't have any confirmation of this, but these were Kashmiri separatists that were doing this, and immediately the security people descended upon them and took them away, and there was quite a situation there.
SWAT team
people
came
were
rushing in and piled onto them.
Many Indian people were screaming, and it was very disconcerting. But that's as closest to a terrorist act I've ever been, and I don't want to get any closer than that. But it demonstrates that there's, it's a volatile situation in their country, and we've had our own problems with this, and I think everybody has to be aware of it, and wherever you travel, even in our own country.
I have one more question before I go at the panel. Our time is short, but education is your field, and you had such a wonderful time. You had some other slides we didn't see of children walking along with you, and I know Judy had some great identification with children. Tell us a little about education and literacy in India.
Well, it's both an encouraging and discouraging story. Roughly half of the world's illiterates live in India. Right now, their literacy rate is about 52%, and there's a vast gap between male and female literacy rates. For men, it's 60-some%. For females, it's 30-some%. In some parts of India, it's far worse than that. For instance, in Rajasthan, where we were, the female literacy rate is only 11%. The male literacy rate is in the 30s. In other parts of India, it's much different. For instance, in Kerala, southern India, which was our favorite part of India, it's over 90%. That can all sound very discouraging. But it's important for us to remember that at the time of Indian independence in 1947, only 15% of Indians were literate. So in fact, in just less than 50 years, they have made enormous headway. And I think almost everyone in India agrees that the real key to India's future is education. So it's encouraging to know right now that every village in India has a school, and that roughly 50% of Indian children today go to school, for at least a few years. Many of them don't stay clear until adolescence, unfortunately, because they're needed to work.
Janelle Burke.
When you travel in a foreign country, sometimes it's difficult to communicate with people. How did you talk with them? Judy mentioned using common kinds of things that you might have, but how did you really learn to talk with them? Jim?
Well, of course, many of them speak English, but it's not our brand of English. It's quite a distinct brand in itself, and their vocabulary is quite different. And I had one experience in a train coming into Kochi in the south of India, where I'd left my eyeglasses in the washroom on the train, and I had called the station and asked them, the man who answered the phone, lost and found, if they had recovered these glasses. And I said something like, I lost my glasses in the bathroom or something of that sort. And of course he said, what? And then Judy was prompting me from the side saying, no, try spectacles or eyeglasses.
You lost your spectacles in the latrine.
In the latrine. And, so I tried various combinations, and every time I did, there was just this blank sound on the end of the phone. And finally, the man said, "Speak English," and I said, "I teach English," and he hung up on me at that point. So you could see the communication there was not quite what I'd hope it would be.
Steve Shinko, about a minute and a half.
I asked you a first question about India as educators. How about tourism? Would you recommend that people go to India and Thailand as tourists?
Oh, I absolutely would. I think you need to be very careful about the part of India that you choose. Obviously, our hearts go out to Donald Hutchings' family in Spokane. You could not pay me enough money to travel in Kashmir right now with the unsettled situation there, although it's a very beautiful part of India. I would put in a big vote for southern India, which is a part that many tourists don't go to, and which Jim and I felt was absolutely the best of it, and we'll see some of that in the next program. But it's a wonderful country, and Thailand, of course, is a tremendously popular tourist destination for good reason.
I have a signal we're out of time. Judy Sildy and Jim McLeod, we thank you, but the good news to our viewers who tuned in late that we'll have 2 more programs. Next week we're going to go to southern India, and on the final program we'll go to other cities and into Nepal and so forth. Please be with us again next week when we continue this journey through Asia with our guest. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
The North Idaho College Public Forum was videotaped live from the studios of Instructional Technology on the campus of North Idaho College for viewing at this more appropriate time. We invite you to join us again next week for another all-new edition of the North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.